Well, thank you for coming, guys. We're going to talk about services versus product startups. It's a very interesting topic because I think that services businesses do not get enough credit. So real quick, Josh Oakhurst, that's my name. Is this too loud? No? Okay. Josh Oakhurst is my name. You can think of me just as generic technology executive guy. Contracts, biz dev, legal stuff. Been at Skookum 5 years. We're a 10-year-old company. We are a technology services company. At one time, we were a technology services startup. So later on, we'll sort of use the lens of how Skookum came to be. So you can start thinking about, hey, maybe I want to have a startup. Maybe I'm looking at a services startup. So how did Skookum do it? Real quick here, custom technology providers. That's our service niche. Rapid innovation strategy, prototyping, so that's hardware and software, engineering, production support, all around custom software development, really difficult integration services, and IoT hacking. So quick agenda here. We're going to talk about the startup industrial complex. Then we're going to talk about the pros and cons, the services versus products, and also, again, viewing through the lens of Skookum, talking about how to make your own services startup. So the startup industrial complex, a little tongue-in-cheek, how many of you feel like that's probably a thing? Or I know it's a thing. So the point is that there are a lot of dreamers in the world right now. And the startup industrial complex is not helping. In fact, there's an extremely, extremely viable business model selling the startup dream to everyone in America. And now you got 17-year-old kids who put up a website and are wondering how quick they get to be Mark Zuckerberg. You get, middle-aged people who think, one day if I could just meet some programmers and they'll do some stuff for free, then we can all be billionaires. So you have the Tech-faux-tainment press that is involved in the startup industrial complex. You got stuff like Shark Tank, all of these stupid, stupid books trying to tell you that if you only have $100, in a month you will have $1 billion. And then you got people like this dude. That's AOL's tech prophet. You guys know Shingy? Yeah. Look up Shingy on YouTube if you want to lose your lunch. But maybe that's not fair because AOL is not technically a startup, are they? They're in the digital world. But so let's replace the startup industrial complex with maybe a local folk hero. I think some of you guys might know him. He's part of the problem too. You have all of these endless accelerators. Just come here, we'll give you money. It's easy, it's easy, it's easy. What do these accelerators pump out? Here's an actual quote from a TechStars grad. Our business plan is that we have investors. That's what I heard from a TechStars grad. Good work there, Brad. You got Startup Weekend. Every city that can string together 3 desperate marketing folks can now hold a Startup Weekend. And that's seemingly who goes to those. You have these co-working spaces, endless co-working spaces. I know these are very popular, but very transparently, they're real estate plays. All over the country, everyone wants to have a startup incubator or a co-working space. Selling the dream, selling the dream. These co-working spaces, like I said, transparent real estate play. It's like if a hotel said, well, everyone here likes taking showers, so clearly this is not a taxable business concern. It's a wetlands. Who can get government grants? Startup industrial complex, it's everywhere. You got the Code School industrial complex, sub-brand of the startup industrial complex. Give us 10 grand in 6 weeks and you too will be a billionaire. And then all of these very, very, very hard to read, difficult magazines. Just selling the dream, selling the myth, selling the fantasy that this is easy. If you just build an iPhone app, if you can get it to the top of the app store, you're going to be rich. I know that most of us don't even read these magazines, especially if you work in this industry. It seems to be inspiration for the general public that's traveling through airports. The wrong place to look for inspiration. This is the right place to look for inspiration. Am I right, Dave? You're right. Dave, minor celebrity here, if you guys didn't know that. Dave Armstrong. In 4 states. Ohio, maybe Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Colorado. Minor celebrity, Dave Armstrong. So that's the startup industrial complex. So it's important to have context for that. Because everything you see in the media about startups is about a product business. You never hear about services startups, right? And the complex is steering people away from that. So even if there is a bright someone who's thinking, I have a good idea, and I've read all this stuff, and I've got these dumb magazines, and I follow these mythical creatures, and I go to these meetups or whatever, they crank out people who are thinking, I need an app, or I need some software, or I need a product. And no one's really thinking about, hey, maybe I should have a services startup. And it's pervasive. It's pervasive. The idea that startup equals product is pervasive. For instance, all of these questions on Quora. Anybody disappointed with the Quora's trajectory as of late and the quality of questions in there? Let's read some of these. How can I get rich from a startup? What's an easier way to get rich than starting a startup? Are startups the only way to get rich quick? Get rich quick. I like the specific nature of this question. Where do startup-ers hang out in London? More in general, people from the bottom but aim to get rich. I'm asking because I want to hang out with people that has goals similar to mine. So the question he's asking there on Quora, in public, with his real name, is, hey, I'm interested in people who want to create a get-rich-quick scheme. Where do I find these people? Hint, everyone on the damn train is looking to get rich. I believe you call it the tube. So, and again, when we talk about startups, you hear about all these valuations, these billion-dollar club unicorns. Now we have decacorns. Like this, all of the press around it, it's feeding to the nature that says, well, a startup equals product, startup equals product. And there's a better way. There's a different way. There's pros and cons and trade-offs. We're going to talk about that. The 3 Comma Club. And one of the things I want to impart on you, too, that startups do not equal billion-dollar unicorn. Like, that is not the only reason to create a business, unlike this guy would think. And there's so many better ways to value your creation, your gift to the universe, the company that you start, the company that you create, and your ideas, rather than just thinking, well, it's 3 commas or nothing. And Skookum is definitely a testament to that. So that's the startup industrial complex. We've all been infected by it. We're all carriers. Even in a great services business like we have, we sometimes talk about the product side. And we get product envy sometimes. And so it's important to remind ourselves that, again, it's not 3 commas or nothing. So now we're going to talk about founding and scaling a services startup. And that's pretty much where we're going to spend the rest of the time. Any questions so far? All right, so a little pro and con session. Tech services versus tech product startup. Now, high level, do we all know what's meant by tech services versus tech product? In general, we're talking about a services business like a plumber or an architect or a lawyer or something like that. In a services business, you're saying, I have skill X, it's good at fixing or making something, and I can do that for you. You pay me money when I come do that thing for you, versus a product startup, which says this is something you buy on your phone, or it's software as a service, meaning it's software that you use in the cloud most likely, and you're paying a monthly fee for it. So the big delineator is that a tech services business or a tech services startup is not going to have this recurring revenue stream. Okay, it might have a little bit, and you could finagle that in the contracts or something, but that's the main difference. So it's project-based. I come, I show up, I build the thing that you need, I fix, I integrate, or whatever. You pay me a fee for that. I'm not expecting another fee, months and months and months down the road. So that's the main difference here between a services startup and a product startup. So how do you found a services startup? It's pretty easy. Just put up a sign, put up a website, business cards, whatever you're good at. You, sir, what are you good at? This guy's good at design. So he could easily have a design startup. Sir, do you have a design services startup? But he could. He could say, hey, I'm good at design. This is my business. And that's it. Compared to founding a tech product, well, you better have a demo. And if you're starting a product startup, that means you need to know how to code. Or you need to learn how to make friends and then hang out with them for 6 or 9 months and then get good at convincing them to learn how to code or convince them to work for free or something like that. This is much harder to found a tech product startup. The investment needed on the tech services side is nothing. You hang your shingle, your first client is your first investment. For the most part, on the services side, what's great about founding one is that you're profitable almost from your first client. At least you hopefully are. Versus a tech product, how much investment do you need before you get your first client? Before you can charge $5 a month for whatever you made? Do you need $10,000, $100,000, $1 million? So that's a very big difference between the services and product startup. Sales process, tech services, client referrals. This guy came over recently to trim my trees. Did a great job. I said, thanks, man. I really appreciate it. He's like, you know what? The best thanks that you can give me is a referral. I told all my neighbors.
Give it to me, my trees need trimming.
Yeah, all trees need trimming. That's exactly right. So if you have a design startup, a design business, and you say, did you like all that software designed for you? They're going to say, yeah, and I know 10 other people that need this level of service because you're so good at your job. Client referrals, tech product. Well, how do you sort of get sales traction here? You need buzz and views and impressions. You hopefully have something go viral and investor meetings, and you need to get to the front page of TechCrunch and all that stuff. Much more difficult. Part of it is the volume of everything coming out. So you spent, months, maybe years, creating your product and convincing your friends and late nights and weekends, and you haven't made a dime yet, and you're hoping finally you're ready to unleash this to the world, and there's still so many gatekeepers in front of you. It's not as simple as just hanging a shingle, because in a product business, you're looking for all of these people to come calling. Much more difficult. So your first hires in a tech services business, Skookum runs off all internal employees. But when you're first starting, it's okay and it's easy to have 1099 contractors. That's how most services business start up, even outside of the tech world. Anyone here a contractor or hire contractors? It's a great way to scale at first, because you're not sure what your sales volume is, and there's network of freelancers out there who are specifically looking for that kind of work. They're saying,
I always did mine differently. We've always done insurance and the whole 9 yards for the employees.
That's nice. Well, and that's
I like it because you want to get people dedicated to the company, so you need to do all those things.
Yeah, so that's a good point. When you are founding a business like that, that's a decision that you can make, is that are my first employees, maybe I say with the first client I have, I want to make sure to wrap up some employees, and I want to make sure to give them some runtime and security, and so maybe I wouldn't take, for instance, a salary home to make sure that we could have employees with benefits and stuff from day one. If you're really trying to create a culture, that's a good way to go, but it's not the only way to go. So the tech product, your first hires are people you pay nothing. It's a hard position to hire for, especially as I think, hello, thank you for coming. I think people are starting to wise up a little bit to the startup game as the Silicon Valley casino, at least some of the cracks in the facade are showing. Maybe 5 years ago, everyone thought, well, if I just have a half a percentage of this company, it's going to equal billions of dollars. Well, on Quora or anywhere else, there's plenty of stories about how I founded a company and ended up with nothing, or I got these stock options and all I got was a huge tax bill for it or something. So paying people nothing is much harder than paying them real cash. Now, growth. So this is where we get to, okay, it's not all roses on the tech services side. When you're selling tree trimming, design services, high-end technology strategy or development, growth, continued sales, it's always a grind. It's always a grind. Anyone here experience that? Just thought it would get easy at some point. You thought those client referrals would still keep coming, and they do, but now all of a sudden, you needed 10 a month, and now you need 20 a month, and it's hard to keep that sustained.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying a lack of skilled workforce that I need.
Okay, so that's the big problem for you. Well, it's funny you say that too, because one of the reasons that we diversified our geographic location and coming to Denver, this office has been open a year, is to hire more people.
I turn in my work every week.
Yeah, because you don't have enough people.
I don't have people in one of my specialties.
Yeah, what is your specialty? I'm curious.
Service provider back office automation, business process automation.
Yeah, so he's talking about service provider automation, back office automation. So high level, from what I know about that world in terms of a services component, I can imagine that you have a lot of trouble finding people because they need to have varied backgrounds. They need to know a little SAP, they need full stack JavaScript, maybe some .NET, kind of all of the above, sort of need to be able to figure out how, you know, this square peg and this round hole can all be sort of streamlined and automated to equal, you know, this hexagon or something like that.
Is it lack of skilled workforce, or is it just a competitive marketplace and a low employment rate for the type of skill set you're targeting?
Well, it's a new workforce required where you take a traditional network engineer and a computer scientist and merge them into one person.
Sure.
And now you have IT, enterprise, and telco network management colliding into a new transformation of the next generation back office. So it was these siloed camps of different individuals. Now you need one person that has that skill set.
Sure.
How do I program a network of 1 million devices, for example?
So here's a great example. I'm glad to hear you talk about that, about back office automation. Is what you're seeing is that all the companies that you're going into, they have products. They have 17 different pieces of software that run their business already. 17 people have started companies here that now have customers that are all pissed off. And there's a services business that needs to come in and fix it because nothing talks to each other. So that's a solid idea when you start thinking about, well, where do I get ideas? There's all these tech products that solve these back office problems, but that's actually a chance for you to play in the services side because there's all these tech products that solve something in the back office. It's kind of where you probably came up with that, I assume.
I actually own a company of each.
One of each, diversification.
I started on the left, and now I've moved to the right.
And some, not all tech services.
Duplicated.
Yeah, and not all businesses are able to go back and forth. That's actually kind of difficult. And so kudos to you if you've been able to be successful in running one of each.
I have been successful on the product side. That's
Yeah.
I'm bootstrapping. So.
Well, I'm going to come back to you on that, on the product side, because you bring up some good points there. Where'd my clicker go? So growth on the tech product side in general, once you get out of the early stages, right? So I'm not saying your first 1,000 customers are easy, all right? That's very difficult. But there is an inflection point to where you get 1,000 or 10,000 customers or sign-ups and stuff, and you spend less and less dollars reaching the next level of customers. Again, compared on the tech services side, for most businesses, there's no sort of growth curve to the clients that are coming. Again, profitability on the tech services side, your first client can be put you into the black, which is very, very good. That's very common. But when you have a tech product, maybe never. And that's a difficult part of it. Hopefully not, but if you look back to all these unicorns on a couple slides ago, are they profitable? You know, everyone's making a bet that there's going to be someone else to invest and someone else to invest. Not saying that no tech products are profitable. It's difficult. So one last spot to where the tech product business has it over the tech services business, and maybe this is why you started a product company, is that when it comes to an exit plan, the valuations on the product side, sometimes for funny reasons, are always higher on the product side where you have recurring revenue versus the services side. So let me give you an example here, sort of rough example. Say, let's say we started a business, right? We started a services business. And we went in and we said, okay, well, it's going to be $1 million just to create whatever, maybe we do $1 million in profit on the project or something like that. If we went to a business evaluator and had them look at the business, they'd say, okay, well, maybe your business is worth 3 times the profit. It's worth $3 million. That said, if we had a product business and we said, well, it was $1 million to build, but we're going to charge them $100,000 a year, an investor might look at that and say, whoa, that business is worth way more than that. And so you get in this weird situation with the valuation of tech services versus tech products to where the cash in the bank can actually be valued less than the idea of recurring revenue over a series of 5 or 10 years. And you see this odd sort of valuation play out when people are trying to exit. So you have business owners that have successful services business, and they're like, man, but I put cash in the bank. I put cash in the bank and I have for 5 or 10 years, and they see that their businesses are worth less than somebody in a similar space, but with a product that is not even profitable, but somehow has a more valuable business. And that's definitely one of the perverse pieces of the technology world specifically. But certainly tech products, if you get something going, if you get something strong, it's a lot easier to command a higher valuation. So
maybe because on the services side, it's so much reliant on your people as opposed to the product, where that if you're looking at an exit strategy and the people aren't there.
yeah, so that's some of the theory, right? Is like, well, people need this, so they're not going to stop paying, per month or per year. Like, no one's ever going to drop their cable plan, right? Because something better will never come along. People are always going to pay that, right? Some of it can be in the contract language. And you see this with a lot of the big tech companies, let's say IBM et al., is that they've got 5-year services contracts. Well, that is guaranteed money. When it comes to some of the newer startups, it's definitely more speculative. People might like your iPhone app and pay $1 a month for it, but they're not locked into it. And I'm a little biased too, right? I definitely understand why reoccurring revenue is important for business valuation. But one thing I always think about too is like a shoe store doesn't have reoccurring revenue, right? If you go in and buy a high-end pair of boots, you don't pay for that every month. There's a lot of businesses, a lot of sort of business strategies, business development plans that seem like they're more valuable than a services. Like, would you rather own a shoe store or a plumbing service, for example? And most of the business market will say, well, I want the retail store. The plumber is just relying on people to call them when their water main breaks. But I think you can make the same argument that, well, people only go into the shoe store when they need new shoes.
So how do you value a tech services company? Because people can just leave.
Mm-hmm.
The skill set is fluid. Is it the pipeline of work that you have?
Yeah.
How do you value it?
So, let's say we were talking to an investment banker or something like that, or a business evaluator, and assuming this is the general, as of right now, a lot of tech services are sort of valued at this EBITDA level, so their level of profits times 3. Another way you could flip that around, sort of in general guideline, is maybe 1 to 1.5 times the top line revenue, so not the bottom line anyway. So we'll think about profits right now, and it is trickier. And let's say you need to go get a loan or you want to sell the business. Once you say, I don't have recurring revenue, your exit plan and the bankers that want to talk to you and the potential acquirers, it gets cut by about 90%. Most of the money, most of the private equity money, it's reoccurring revenue or nothing. So first of all, to value the business, you have to have a more sophisticated banker that knows a little bit about the industry and knows a little bit more about your niche and can care. So when you go to sell or raise money for a tech services business, you can't have an indifferent financial partner. They have to care, they have to know about the space, they have to know about what you can do here. And so when a big time investor, I'm talking about institutional investor, starts thinking about, well, what is this business worth? They start thinking about how they're going to get their money out. And for the most part, they're thinking, well, a large tech services business, I can IPO. So I can take that to market. Or even the small tech services business, I can buy it as an investor and then flip it to a strategic acquirer. So for example, back to my shoe store, let's say the shoe store gets real big. Well, there's a company that runs trucks to the shoe store. They're dependent on the shoe store for the transportation route, but an investment banker might say, well, that's just a trucking business, but I know that the shoe store would really like to have that trucking business in-house. And so that's where this number can kind of go out the window and the value can go up when you're talking about a strategic acquisition, diversification of the business unit, thinking, well, I need a trucking business and then I need a clothing manufacturer, et cetera, et cetera. But on the surface, just going to value this, it's strength of the pipeline, the team still matters, and then historical data matters for a lot. So again, if an investor is savvy about your space, they can say, well, there's no 5-year services contracts, but over the last 5 years, they've demonstrated their ability to have repeat business and get more and more clients to come to them. It's a trickier valuation And like I said, we know firsthand that you just need a different kind of evaluator to even understand it. And 90% of the institutional capital doesn't want anything to do with the tech services business. So when you think about leaving, you've made your services startup. You said, hey, I've done this for a while. I'd like to sell it. Well, it's too bad that I can't get some of the sweet, 8 to 15 times, bottom line. That's where people start to get sort of product envy, and sometimes even take their eye off the ball and say, well, man, we're in the same business, and I actually put cash in the bank. How is that? How is the guy next door, because he's got a product that's not even profitable? How is his business worth more than mine? And that's just a foundation of the market right now. But another thing that tech services business can do is sort of pass the business down to a next generation of employees. And so you see a lot of services business, not even on the tech side, will say, well, we'll set up an employee transition plan so the founders can exit over time and then hand equity of the business over to the next generation of managers, and so on and so forth. And so that does allow an exit plan for the original founders. They can cash out, they can liquidate, and also leaves an upside for the next set of investors. But oftentimes, depending on the service business and the management team you have, that can be a better exit strategy than trying to go to the open market and sell the business. Is that how you came into your services business? You were sort of the next generation and said, take this over?
Sort of a hybrid, services and resale.
Yeah.
Not our own product necessarily, but.
No, for instance, I know another, a lady that runs just a financial investment firm, for high net worth individuals or whatever. It's not a product business. It's just, hey, you're too busy to manage your $2 to $10 million. Like, I'll find the right way to invest it. Case in point, just another anecdote, is that business was handed down to her. She bought that business from somebody else. She had worked in it. To go sell a services business like that, clients can leave and whatever. But if there's less of a transition, the clients are familiar with the people, there's less risk. That's a direct case where by selling it to the people already working in the business, the founder was able to exit for a higher valuation than if he just put it on the open market. I'm not a private equity guy, but I pretend. All right, but back to this. So let's say even if you're successful, you create a unicorn, you have your product, you got your friends to work for free. First you made friends, and then you got them to work for free. And you're like, sweet, we're going to be the next Facebook or whatever. Cautionary tales. Even the unicorns might not get you rich. So we should all go back to Quora when we get back to our offices and our computers and let people know, hey, just so you know, there's greener pastures, man. It's not $1 billion and 3 commas or bust. This is a great article. So going back to here. So any questions or disagreements about this, about the way I've set it up?
Well, I recommend people, I've got a banker, and that president who's a banker, a friend of ours, and they've been a business banker for 10 years. And it's been great because when we need credit or cash, he understands our business. It's been amazing.
Yeah, the point there is that you need a relationship when you need institutional capital. Again, if you didn't have the relationship, you just walk in and they're going to be like, all the clients could leave, and I don't know anything about this business, and there's nothing here. But somebody that knows you are like, nah.
We meet with them every quarter, so they pay attention to us, so we kind of say, here's what we need to know, what we want to do.
Yeah, what is your services business?
We're a Microsoft partner, and we focus on high-end integration similar to back-end stuff for a long time, and we sort of, we sell through referrals normally, but we're diversified to a larger, we have sort of like $23 billion clients and startups, so we kind of have a large, diverse set of people.
Yeah.
And I admit our hardest problem is finding the employees, because you have to find employees who can write JavaScript, do .NET, because we're doing DevOps and SQL, and finding that engineer who doesn't want to do one thing. And I also require my engineers to be able to talk to customers, so I've also created another problem.
So that's a different kind of unicorn you're looking for.
Well, no, I actually don't think it is, because I worked at Accenture and a few other places, and if you look at the way those guys are set up.
Boo.
But you can boo.
Sorry.
But I also worked at Sapient. We looked at the idea that if you can have engineers that can also do the business, you've created engineers who are salespeople as well as,
That's true. So I mean, one thing client will work a lot out of referrals. You hung a shingle, said we're a Microsoft, partner. This is how we could start. That's a really good anecdote. I'm glad you talked about that. Yeah.
Just a comment on profitability. One of the struggles I'm having or see is the valuing the hourly rate of the skilled person.
Mm-hmm.
For example, even today I saw a thing come by for a job and it said rate of $80 an hour, and that should be $250 an hour.
Right.
That posting for that job. So it's like the large companies who are hiring these consultants don't understand the value of specific skill sets, and they equate it to a tech writer. I mean, absolutely, there's no comparison.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that. So I'm going to be a little obtuse here, but I'm going to go back to some of that Tech-faux-tainment press, right? That's part of it. Well, any jerk-off sort of college kid that's got an iPhone can create $1 billion company. So what I need is not that hard. It's $80 an hour. I don't want to pay more than that. That happens. And especially when you get people writing these job postings that aren't educated about, well, you're looking for this unicorn that needs these 12 different languages. They need to be a senior programmer in all of them. And oh, by the way, all of those people already have jobs. So now you're looking for the sliver that's not booked up. That's why it's a $250 an hour posting. But if you're just like, hey, we need this fixed, I don't understand. I mean, I use Facebook and upload pictures to it. It's super easy. Well, they've got 3,000 engineers or whatever they have. You know what I mean? That's a difficult spot. Certainly. I mean, we go through that too on the services side. A lot of what we do is education. I will say, I'll talk about more of our niche in a second, but part of our pitch and part of our go-to-market strategy is that we actually work best for clients that have felt pain. So we know that they're a little educated. They're not going to come to us with unrealistic expectation. And they've hired IBM or Microsoft or Sapient or Accenture. And they're like, man, I spent $20 million and it took 3 years and it sucked. So then when we start talking to them, well, this particular phase is $250 an hour. They're like, great. I paid $600 an hour to Boston Consulting Group or whatever.
It just reminded me, I have a call at 5:30 tonight for a client who's a consultant firm, and I asked them basic questions. They were hired into a large cable company to solve some problem. The basic questions I asked of this consulting firm, they can't even answer the basic questions. And they were hired by this large cable company to solve some kind of problem.
Well, I would be happy to do another tech talk where we just sort of bag on the consulting firms. Accenture and we got some good stories too. And then they asked for this much. Young lady over here, did you have something to say? Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Would you consider a company like Yelp a hybrid with tech services and tech product, maybe?
So that's a good question. I would consider them a product. Okay. So they're monetizing themselves via ad revenue and whatever sort of pro services they have. So they're making a monthly recurring revenue from the ads. And then I don't really know much about Yelp, honestly. Maybe if you're a business owner, you can pay a little extra to make sure that people don't intentionally salt your comments. Probably something like that. Yelp is a good business. Very difficult to start and found and run and scale a company that relies on that much ad revenue. But for the most part, like Facebook relies on ad revenue. That's definitely more of a product. I think. I could be wrong. We could debate about that. Anyone disagree with me? Yeah, and the market would value Yelp and Facebook like a product company too. They're on the unicorn slide. Any questions here before we go on?
Hey Josh, I just have one comment on the tech services side is I found the key to success is choosing your clients.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you didn't touch on that one specifically, but even though the first client you just say yes to, but after that, having criteria to choose your clients and saying no, because sometimes you're saying no to money you need next month, but when you say no, it gives you the chance to say yes to the next one, where if you said yes, that next one doesn't even really come.
Yeah, so
Choosing your clients is critical in the tech services.
for the camera, minor celebrity Dave Armstrong here just recommended that tech services businesses be very specific about the types of clients they take on. And that's often what you find in the services business. You have this problem too, opportunity cost, right? It's like, well, I could do this one, or I could hold out for the next one, or is this going to burn my people out even though I need the cash? I find too that as I mature and the company matures, like saying no is often a powerful tool on the services side because you can't say yes to everything.
Yeah, it's a weird phenomenon to say no and raise your rates and your business gets better. It's
Yeah.
a strange phenomenon, but I mean, you got to deliver. But
Yeah, that's definitely when you find yourself turning business away,
it works though.
price goes up. Any more questions here? Comments? No? There we go. So startup services biz how-to. So there's one thing I want to harp on here. Let's say you're good at something like design, for example, back office stuff. If you're new to thinking about, well, maybe I could have a services startup business, this is probably your first delineation point. Okay, I want to go to market. I'm good at this. I'm a good tree trimmer. So am I going to do it for apartment buildings or residential units or commercial or maybe city? Or am I just going to say, well, I'm a tree trimming business, but I don't plant trees and I don't take care of them and I don't consult with landscape architects. This is a very good place to start. Now, it's not either or, right? Skookum chose a third path, which is neither, focusing neither on an industry or an execution. And I don't recommend that. Having, this business is 10 years old. That makes the sales process even more of a grind. And what I'm talking about there is that, for instance, we don't say we build cool stuff for HR departments or for the manufacturing industry or for aerospace. We also don't say, well, we'll work for manufacturing, aerospace and HR departments, but we only do .NET integrations, or we're only a Rails shop. We say that we'll work for anybody, and we'll build anything. We'll execute for anyone, for anything. And that's difficult when it comes to marketing and targeting, or even how you hire. So that's definitely the one spot I would tell people to focus on is, start off with a niche, pick an area you're good at, because that makes it easier to say, I'm a designer for pet grooming shops or whatever. Do you like pet grooming shops? I mean, you can just have that. Doesn't like pet grooming shops. Okay. So going back to Skookum here, just wanted to talk about, so the business is 10 years old, so just wanted to kind of run through this and talk about how that applies to us. So 10 years ago, 15 years ago, two guys graduate from UNC Charlotte, University of North Carolina, Charlotte. They go to work for the Department of Defense, and then a couple years after that, they're like, the DoD kind of sucks, but they were doing high-level database encryption. And so they're like, you know what, maybe we should just have our own business and we'll sell to anybody. So that's what they did. They hung a shingle, they put up a website, they called a couple people they know, and they're like, sure, I'll give you some business. And that's it. And that's how the business ran for 18 months, maybe 2 years. And then they made their first hires. They're like, okay, well, now there's finally enough business for more than two of us can handle. Let's start bringing people on. And their first clients, started making payroll. They didn't really do any sales. The first 5 years of the business, sales was, for the most part, just client referral after client referral. And then so growth, so years, let's say 4 through 10. This is, we got better about it. We started at least diversifying our marketing a little bit, at least targeting some niches, even though we broadly sold anything to anyone. But we have found this too. Even as the business has been successful, even as sales has gone up, we've had to get really good at it because it is still a grind even to today. And profitability, I mean, from one client to the next, we're in a good spot where we can talk about, do we take on this project? Is it profitable? Is it profitable? Thinking about an exit plan, whatever that is, maybe there is no exit plan. Maybe we could just run this business forever. I mean, there's 50, 60 people that are having their mortgage paid, and that's part of the point too, is that a services business can be a great lifestyle business, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's okay if you're like, yeah, I got a $2.5 million services business. I like it. I like the work. I like the people. I'm not trying to be 20 million or 200 million, right? I mean, if you don't go public, are you going to cry into your pillow? No.
I've done multiple services. I've sold a few too.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't huge, but they've been really good. We like it because we also run a nonprofit for robotics for kids in Colorado. So
there you go.
I can control my time, which is more valuable than money.
Time more valuable than money for the camera. Nothing truer said yet today. And that's definitely one of the points that I wish more people thinking about startups thought about, which is just, you know what? I'm obsessed with trying to get rich, and I read all this Tech-faux-tainment press, and it's pushing me this way. But the main point is to say, how can I have a business where I enjoy doing what I like? I like going to work every day. It's fulfilling, and we can make money at it. And oftentimes, the overlooked path to having your own startup is on the services side. And that's really the drum I've been trying to beat here. We have a great business here. We like it. Not without its challenges, but we don't pretend that just having a product business is going to be a walk in the park. As you know directly, got a services business, can't hire fast enough. Product side, who knows? Maybe you'll be successful at it, but it's definitely not one and the same. You can't just flip this machine over to this and say we have a product now and expect the same sort of returns. It's a grind too to get it started, as you can attest to, I'm sure. All right, any questions about Skookum or our life cycle or how we started or how we think about our services business? No? Thanks for coming to eat the pizza. All right, maybe we'll see you in a couple Wednesdays. Thank you.